Hello and welcome back to the channel. And today we're going to work on creating this beautiful landscape painting. Now it may look complicated, but trust me, it's simpler than you think once you break it down into easy steps. In this tutorial, I'll walk you through every part of the process, from sketching and composition to coloring and shading. You'll get to see all the tools I use and how I use them, so by the end, you'll have everything you need to create your own landscape masterpiece. Let's get started. Step 1. Setting up your canvas. The first thing we need to do is set up the canvas. I'm using a 2800 by 1650 pixel canvas, which fits the screen size of my Samsung tablet. To set this up, go to your canvas settings, select screen size, and click Create. It's important to use the right canvas size to avoid stretching or losing detail later on, so make sure your settings match your project's needs. Once you've got that set up, we're ready to begin sketching. Step 2. Sketching the composition with rule of thirds. Now let's move on to the composition. A good composition makes all the difference in your painting, and I'm using the rule of thirds to guide us. If you're unfamiliar with the rule of thirds, it's a basic design principle where you divide the canvas into 9 equal parts by drawing 2 vertical and 2 horizontal lines. The focal points of your painting should align with where these lines intersect. For this painting, I'm placing a small house at the top left intersection and designing the scene so that the viewer's eye is drawn from the bottom right to the top left. To guide the viewer's eye, I'm sketching a winding road that starts in the bottom right corner and leads to the house. This helps create flow and movement in the scene. We'll also sketch in a few hills and mountains surrounding the house. Remember, this is just a rough sketch to block out the key elements like the house, hills, trees, and bushes. You don't need to worry about any details at this stage, just get the basic structure down. Step 3. Refining the sketch. Once the rough composition is ready, we can start refining the sketch. I'm going to add more layers of hills and mountains to give the painting depth. The more layers of mountains we have, the more opportunities we'll get to use different shades and tones, which will make the final painting more dynamic. Now we'll add a few trees and bushes to the scene. Try to vary their shapes and sizes for a more natural look. I like placing different tree shapes in different areas to create variety. You can always add more trees later if needed. Step 4. Setting up layers for painting. Now that our sketch is ready, it's time to prepare for the coloring stage. First, hide the grid lines we used for the rule of thirds so we can see the canvas clearly. Next, reduce the opacity of the sketch layer to about 20% and change its blending mode to multiply. This way the sketch will remain visible while we paint underneath. We're going to create a new layer below the sketch layer. This will be our first paint layer, and any object we paint now will sit beneath the sketch but still be visible. As we move forward, we'll create different layers for each part of the painting, so we can easily adjust elements later on. Step 5. Blocking in colors. Now for the fun part, adding color. I'm starting by blocking in large areas of color using the clay roller brush. This brush is great for covering large sections of the canvas quickly, and it has a nice textured look that works well for landscapes. We'll begin by painting the mountains. I'm using various tones of blue here, starting with a dark blue for the farthest mountains, and gradually lightening the tone as we move forward in the composition. Don't worry if the colors don't look perfect right now. We can adjust them later. Next, I'm going to block in the foreground hill with a bright yellow. This hill is in the front and should stand out against the blue mountains, so I've chosen a color that really pops. The bushes around the hill will be a dark Prussian blue, creating a nice contrast between the bright hill and the surrounding landscape.
Step 6. Adjusting and experimenting with colors. As you block in the colors, feel free to experiment. For instance, I've painted the trees in a bright blue for now, but I'll change them to green later. You're not locked into any colors at this stage, so don't be afraid to try new things. If you're not satisfied with a color, you can easily adjust it later. One way to do this is to select the color of an object, go to the color wheel, and drag the cursor downward to darken the tone. You can also adjust the hue slightly to bring variety to your painting.
Step 7. Adding shadows and depth. Now let's start adding some depth to the landscape. I'm going to select the Filbert brush for this stage. This brush is great for blending, and it gives a smooth, oil paint-like texture. For the sky, I'm using a mix of purple and lilac tones to create a soft, twilight feel. I'll add clouds in with orange and yellow hues to make it look like the sun is setting. If the clouds look too harsh, you can use the smudge tool to blend them gently into the sky. For each mountain layer, I'll darken the base to create a shadow effect and give the mountains a 3D look. You can do this by selecting a darker version of the color you used for each mountain layer. You can also experiment with changing the hue slightly. Adding a bit of purple or yellow can create an interesting effect and make the landscape more vibrant. Step 8. Creating details in the foreground. Now we'll focus on adding detail to the foreground. This is the area closest to the viewer, so it will need the most attention to detail. Step 9. Painting the road and house details. When painting the road, keep in mind that it should look slightly sunken below the surrounding grass. To create this effect, I'm shading the edges of the road with a darker tone of the grass color. This will give the road a sense of depth, making it feel like it's actually part of the landscape. Now let's add some details to the house. For the roof, I'm locking the alpha layer so we can paint without going outside the lines. I'm adding roof tiles using a darker shade of pink to give the house more character. Next, I'll tweak the colors of the trees, making them greener and more subtle so they blend better with the landscape. I'll also add shadows to the trees and bushes to give them a more three-dimensional appearance. I'm going to add grass strokes to the foreground hill using various shades of yellow and green. To make the grass look realistic, use quick small strokes and vary the direction of your lines. Finally, let's add some finishing touches to the painting. Like more grass on the hills, extra trees in the background, and a few more flowers scattered around. These little details will pull everything together. Next, let's add some small flowers to the foreground. I'm using a bright yellow to create tiny flower dots scattered across the hill. You can also add white flowers for more variety. These little details bring the landscape to life and give it that extra touch of realism. Step 10. Final touches and fine-tuning. Before we wrap up, let's add some final touches. I realized I forgot to add a chimney to the house, so let's do that now. Small details like these can make a big difference, so take your time with them. And there you have it. A beautiful, vibrant landscape painting that's both detailed and dynamic. I hope you found this tutorial helpful and easy to follow. Remember, practice is key, and the more you experiment with different tools and techniques, the more confident you'll become. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave your comments below. Your feedback helps me create better tutorials for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Until then, happy painting!